Is faith for people who can't handle reality?
Ouch. I'm Yisrael Glick, originally from Melbourne, Australia. Now I live here in Crown Heights. I'm a rabbi and I teach, I do classroom teaching and I teach online.
My name is Sofia and I go to Barnard College at Columbia University. I keep thinking, as a college student, it's the first time that I'm really on my own to figure out Judaism for myself. There's no one telling me what to believe or how to believe, or I'm here to explore it and figure it out for the first time. So I'm just curious, is faith for people who can't handle reality?
Ouch. Is faith just for people who can't handle reality? So let me rephrase the question. Does faith have value and benefit to offer everyone? Or is it just for people who are maybe in urgent need of, moral support, let's say, or something like that, right? Can't handle reality and I need faith to prop me up. I'm going to be a good Jew and respond with the question. Is exercise only for people who are really unhealthy and on the verge of getting sick as a result of being unhealthy? Obviously the answer is no, right? But that's not just a rhetorical response, ooh, is exercise only for people who are really unhealthy? I want to explain because I think it's a very strong analogy. What I would say is maybe seems to be the thinking behind the question, which is valid and reasonable, also equally applies in the case of exercise. And a part of this is the fact that being healthy doesn't mean not being sick, not being unhealthy. Right? There's, let's say, what would be a standard baseline of health and well-being, which includes not being sick and not being unwell. But that's not where it stops, right? Let's say someone was unwell and the doctor told them they have to start eating better and doing exercise and, being on top of all these things, and then they do, and then they feel better and they, get their body and their cardiovascular system and everything into the shape it needs to be in. How many people do you think who go through that are going to be like, okay, sweet, I'm in good shape, boom, let's go back? Right? Generally, most people don't, they continue, and the reason is because they realize and appreciate, what? When I manage my body and live my life the way that my body was designed to live, it's good for it. I feel better. I have more energy. My positive emotions up, my negative emotions down. Everything's better. Everything about life is better. It's more pleasant. The quality of my lived experience is better. And that doesn't stop once a person's not unwell or sick anymore. There's no limit on how much more healthy a person can get, right? Our bodies can always become more metabolically fit than they already are. We can improve our longevity. We can improve the health of our bodies, metabolically, epigenetically. There are all of these things. There's no limit to how much you can do. And living a life in which we use our bodies the way they're supposed to be lived, the way they're supposed to be used, is just going to continue to make us more and more and more and more healthy. It's not two options, healthy versus unhealthy. Someone who's unhealthy has to exercise to become healthy. Now they're healthy, they don't need exercise anymore. With faith, it's the same sort of thing. It's true, and there is a relatively common phenomenon that people who are in difficult times in their lives maybe often, find religion. And there are many parts to that. I don't want to oversimplify and say this is the whole thing that's going on, because there are a lot of things going on. First of all, if it's true that the Creator exists and that we are here to have a relationship with the Creator and to live a life of faith, if that's the truth, then it's the truth for everyone, regardless of whether or not they can handle life. That's got nothing to do with it, if it's true. That's first of all. Even if we're not talking about whether or not it's true or whether or not it's right, whether it's right or wrong, even if we want to look at it just from a utilitarian perspective, does it have some tangible benefit to offer everyone, even people who can handle life? Then we come back to the exercise. Absolutely, it has plenty to offer everyone, and it's very clear in the data that there are many, many benefits that are measurable that people get from having faith. It reduces the experience of pain. I mean, there's a long list of things, and the data are very clear that faith is beneficial. Even if you want to look at it just from a very utilitarian perspective, the fact that someone can handle life, maybe someone's life is going perfectly fine, and not only are they handling it, it's amazing. Does that mean it couldn't be more amazing? Does that mean that if they have an amazing life and they do feel fulfilled and they're a good person and they're doing all the right things and, within reason, and their life is rich and fulfilling and satisfying, if they then introduce a whole additional element of meaning and purpose into their life on top of what they already had, is that not going to make it even more beautiful and fulfilling and satisfying? Right? So in response to the question, I would say, the question is religion only for people who can't handle life? Let me reword that so it's a little bit less hostile. Is religion really only needed by people who are in a really rough spot? And the answer to that is categorically no. Is it the case that people who are in a really, really rough spot might have a more obvious, urgent need for a lot of the benefits that religion offers? Yeah, that's for sure true. There's no point in anyone's life at which they're beyond being able to benefit from having faith, from introducing more meaning into their life, another valuable experiential relationship. Absolutely not. There's everybody can benefit, and everybody can continue to benefit by building on that and increasing their faith and strengthening their faith and making their faith more strong and deep and complex.
I understand how faith can help people even when they have a good handle on reality, but what about people who they're not spiritual by nature?
Good question. I think that the essence or the core of the answer to that question is what faith is versus what faith is not in Judaism, right? In Judaism, faith is not a yes or no question. Do I believe? Do I not believe? That is the be all and end all. Either I have faith or I don't have faith, and that's it. Faith in Judaism is supposed to be experiential. Faith is about not just believing that God exists, believing that the Creator exists, but about having, nurturing, cultivating a experiential, interactive relationship with the Creator. Now, yes, that's going to vary a lot. Let's take something that's different but equivalent to illustrate. Human beings are social creatures. We all need interactions. We all need relationships. We all need to socialize. There's a very broad spectrum of degrees. There are some people who like 1, 2, 3 very deep and strong connections and relationships, and then they might absolutely hate going out and, the conventional take on socializing and being out and about in a loud place and hanging out with tons of people. The fact that someone doesn't enjoy socializing or hanging out with a lot of people doesn't mean that having relationships isn't important to them. It means that when they look at someone who's the opposite end of the spectrum, who's an extrovert and has endless supply of friends and is always out and doing something and being active, when they look at that person, and if that's how you define socializing, then a person might say, yeah, you know what, socializing is really not for me, because they're looking at that version of socializing and that's really not for them. But that doesn't mean that they don't need to socialize at all. It doesn't mean that they don't need to have some degree of meaningful human-to-human interaction, meaningful loving relationships and connections with other people. Everybody needs that. So is the faith experience of a spiritual person also for someone who's very different in nature and isn't a spiritual person by nature? Maybe absolutely not. You know what? My relationships with the people who are close to me might not be the kind of relationships that would be interesting or valuable to you. And what the kind of socializing that's beneficial to me might be very different to the kind of socializing that's different to you. So if you look at the way I socialize and you say, well, that's not for me, that doesn't mean that socializing's not for you. And if I look at the way that someone else socializes, the way you socialize with someone else, they say, well, that's not for me, that doesn't mean socializing's not for me. That means that version of socializing's not for me. Faith is supposed to be a personal, interactive, experiential relationship with God. It's not a yes or no question, do I believe, do I not believe? It's a 24/7 ongoing experience. And that's for everyone. Does the experiential relationship of a person who's spiritual by nature look very different to the ideal experiential relationship of someone who's very not spiritual in nature, they don't look similar at all. They probably look completely different, and they might each look at the other one and think, well, that's not really faith. It's like, yeah, not for you, but it is for them. The same way that I might look at someone else's relationship and say, well, that's not a relationship, and maybe it wouldn't be for me, but maybe it is for them, right? There are lots of different kinds of fulfilling and meaningful and beautiful relationships that are going to vary for different kinds of people. Now, it also depends on what you mean by spiritual, but a person can be a very sort of tangible, concrete thinking and oriented person and not be someone that you would generally describe as spiritual. And when they look at someone who's very spiritual and they look at their faith, they're like, well, that's not for me, maybe. But that doesn't mean that they can't or that they shouldn't have their own version of an experiential relationship with the Creator in a way that's natural for them and that works for them and that's going to be fulfilling and meaningful to them and satisfying to them. So faith absolutely is a spiritual person's faith experience the right thing for someone who's not a spiritual person? Probably not. But that's not the definition of faith. Faith is supposed to be experiential, which means by definition it will be different for every single person. So some people's will be quite similar, but they're all going to be somewhat different, and then some people's are going to be extremely different because it's a relationship. And if it's a real experiential relationship, it's going to be very different to the real experiential relationship of someone else who's different. So are they different? Yes. Is the faith experience of a spiritual person for someone who's not a spiritual person? Probably not. But faith doesn't have to be like that. Faith is whatever kind of experiential connection and relationship with the Creator and with the purpose of existence is right for that person. And everyone has their own variation of that. So faith is for everyone.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you subscribe to our channel.